Hello, all you beautiful stars. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and hitting that like button. Today, we have such a beautiful human being here. This is Thomas Freese. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you. I'm happy to join y'all.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Thomas is going to be at the Natural New Earth Market here in Ringgold, Georgia. I keep talking about it. Come on down. Thomas, he's a published author. We're going to talk a lot about that because his books are amazing, folks. He's a wood craftsman. He is a reader, a palmist. Rare to find, right? So as we explore all of Thomas's talents, skills, and gifts that he can offer, I first want to ask you, Thomas, what is your personal definition of awakening?
Well, that's a good question. And I think so many people are playing around or dancing around or experimenting with that ideas. And it could be different things at different times in our lives. I think for a child, it's just awakening to play. That's how we learn, or just dancing in the rain or music. And sometimes I think whatever version of grown-up awakening we follow, we revisit some of those wonderful phases of our spiritual evolution, our awakening from the past. And now, of course, being awoke, or woke is kind of a political buzzword that gets thrown around. Like, what does that mean? Like, are you more awake than me? Or, or you're talking about, tuning in your consciousness to the 10th dimension. And I'm like, wow, y'all are leaving me behind. I'm still dealing with, dimensions 3 or 4. And so, that one comedian, I can't remember his name, with the long red hair, he gets on and does videos about how more evolved he is and everything.
More, yes. Yeah, I think you're talking about J.P. Spears.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
He's great.
He's so funny. And yeah. So, have you found Jesus? Might be one question to check in with your, your evolution or your consciousness, or, code words, there's code switching. For me personally, I grew up Catholic, and so that was kind of a strong element in our family for hundreds of years. So I think just at one point, I felt like there's an even bigger universe than kind of, that spiritual mode that I was kind of given and gifted.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wonderful things about each faith journey, but then there's a lot of challenges, and you can criticize either way of that. But I started, hearing about auras and reincarnation and Edgar Casey and this and even in middle school, I would buy books. I'd go to Scholastic and I'd buy books. Books with stories about Atlantis and raining frogs and UFOs and just all kinds of, it was the 70s. So a lot of stuff was opening up.
Right.
Not only with books and culture, but also, folks experimenting even more with mind altering substances.
Right.
So I think my awakening journey has been, I relate to an evolution. When I was a teenager, I became an amateur astronomer. And so I would spend time, I'd take a break from a, big family there and go outside. It'd be midnight or 2 a.m. with my telescope. I'd be all alone. And I think, it was that teenager expanding consciousness anyway, but also it was the 60s becoming the 70s. It was, stuff was happening. But I think sitting out there with the stars opened up my sensitivity to the spirit world. Because
there you go.
When you're out there with the stars and it's quiet, you are one with the universe. You realize that we're just this, kind of little rock hurtling through space, and you get a perspective. And so I actually became a Catholic charismatic, and I opened up to, those charismatic gifts. And that was a lot of fun. I went to prayer meetings, a little break from Catholic Mass, and
Wow.
started, studying the Bible and learning how to pray in tongues. And it was all this awakening at a young age.
Wow.
Some people may not find a spiritual awakening till their 40s or 50s. Who knows? Could happen anytime, just like
Yeah.
Grandma Moses didn't start painting, I guess, until her 70s.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can awake in different ways. And I think sometimes for housewives, for moms, they're so busy with the practical aspect of raising kids that maybe they don't, they're awake in their own way, but maybe there's an opening up. So does awakening mean opening, and in what way? So sometimes we have the blinders on, like I gotta do this job, I gotta raise my kids. So sometimes I think for
Yeah.
moms and dads, they kind of maybe they loosen up a little later, after the kids start getting all set up and off to
Yeah.
college, and then the awakening happens there. But for me, it was uh, Catholic upbringing, charismatic, and then getting more into kind of New Age literature and groups. And I went to Edgar Casey's study group and just started studying, reading books and studying in earnest. So by the time I got out of college and then I got married and we had a kid, it took a little while though to kind of circle back. And I really wanted to make a faith and a spiritual reality real for me. So I started studying, I got a hold of cards. Someone
Yeah.
gifted me with a set of tarot cards. And I thought, well, actually, my mom gave me my first set of tarot cards, my Catholic mom. And
Oh, guys, can you really hear that? Because I have people in my audience, Thomas, that they grew up Catholic and it was very hard for them. And there's a lot to process. There's still a lot to work through.
yeah,
And
it
it
was
ends up kind of being that tunnel vision that like all Catholics are bad. When the whole lot of my mother's side is still very Catholic, and it's like they're not bad. They're not bad people. Um, so that's lovely that your own mother gifted, because your first tarot deck needs to be gifted to you, and it came from your Catholic mother. That is lovely. I think people need to hear that.
I
Yeah,
think for the Catholic journey, the difficulty for me was the guilt,
yeah,
kind of the all pervading, guilt about sin, and kind of trying to lighten up about that a little bit, and also to, look at spirituality in a broader
in a broader sense.
context. I went to college, I started meeting people from all different backgrounds,
Right.
and and then meeting folks that had been coming from a Christian solid tradition, but also opening up to, like I mentioned, Edgar Casey and other authors and gifted people along the way. I mean, Edgar Casey, he was from Kentucky. I live in
Yeah.
Kentucky. He was a sleeping psychic. He
Yeah.
had a very strict fundamentalist Christian
Oh
background.
yeah. I don't think people know. He started the Bible every January 1st and read it every year all the way through every year. Yeah, I don't think, and I think it's because, you know, oftentimes we're influenced as, oh, all this stuff is bad, but you can still have a belief of something and expand. And that's what I'm hearing from you is the expansion, the opening your eyes and giving yourself the room to look at all this stuff.
Right, I agree. Just giving something a chance. Like, let me just take a look at this. So I started getting books on palm reading in the 90s. And I thought, well, there's the only way to find out if there's really something here is to study it. And let me take a look at people's palms. And I wasn't working as a reader at first at the psychic fairs. I was there as an artist, a vendor. And then I would say, people would visit my booth. I say, hey, can I look at your hands for a minute? I wasn't charging.
Yeah.
But the organizer, this is New Earth Festivals, and excuse me, he lived down in Tennessee, Tom Barish, and he had shows in Kentucky and a number of states. And he saw me. He came over and he said, "I see you've been looking at people's palms." At the time, I was living in Lexington, Kentucky, and I said, "Oh, I'm not charging any money. I'm just trying to learn." He said, "Well, next month our show's in Lexington, and we don't have a palm reader."
Yeah, Thomas, I have to say, so let's get into it. Let's talk about who Thomas is, folks. Thomas is one of the most lovely humans, and we're going to talk about everything he does. But let's talk about palm reading for a minute, because I have to say, Thomas, we've done 2 shows together now. And I, for some reason, have kept like just missing the fact, because I'm looking at all your beautiful crafts and this and that. And then finally I saw, I believe the last show, that you were a palmist, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, for this event in Ringgold, Georgia, the Natural New Earth Market, Thomas does do palm reading. I can guarantee you I'm having my husband sit down in front of you, because for some reason this past summer, I don't know what came over me, but it was like, I have to find a palmist. I need our palms to be read. I don't know what it was. It was just spirit, just saying, yeah, Courtney, have your palms read, you and Brad's. And then you registered and I went, oh, we're going to get our palms read. I got so excited. How long do you think, because I know nothing really about it. Of course, we all probably watch little videos here and there. How, I don't want to say accurate, but how involved is that palm reading?
Well, first of all, folks can read the palms in different ways. So you can learn by book knowledge, or you can just stare at the hand and let spirit tell you just things that'll pop in. So one way is, you might say, kind of academic, but it's still valid. And then the other way is like looking at tea leaves. You're just looking at the palm and then waiting for spirit to tell you what pops in. And I do a merge, I do a balance of both of those. But when I was in college, I hired a palm reader. This was, before I became one, obviously, for my birthday party. And there was a line the whole evening, just going back to that back bedroom where she was set up. And so she was an inspiration. She was amazing. She lived in San Antonio, Texas, where I was living, and I finished up college. And Ruth Moye, and just an amazing lady, an artist. And I just really saw like, okay, there's really something there, and people can relate to it. So the palms are called the brain made visible. And the lines are formed in utero. They're not formed from creasing.
Now everybody's looking at their hands. Really?
Yeah. So there's just kind of regular things that you can connect from book knowledge. Yeah. And then there's things that'll just pop in for me. And then, I just think maybe in other cultures, we just grow up with it. Other cultures, they just will read the signs and everything, the birds flying by, or let me take a look at this mark in your hand. Everything's signs and synchronicity and significance. Whereas in our Western culture, we kind of have to be taken by the hand and like, come on.
Yes.
Like, let's go to this art exhibit. Come on, you'll like it. Just come on. So I think palm reading was like that for me. And I just kind of jumped in both feet. And then I had been reading my own cards for a decade for just myself. And then it was kind of obvious, like, well, here I'm doing palm readings at these psychic fairs, but I've done the cards for myself for a decade. Why don't I just bring the cards
throw that in the mix? Yeah. So Thomas, may I say, I'm so happy to hear you talk about how long you took to learn, to understand, to get comfortable, to be confident in yourself as well. Because I think we lose that in the Western society as well.
Right. I didn't like, just go glom onto some notable person and say, oh, would you mentor me? And that's one way to learn for sure. You think about the healers and Reiki, and like this person has got so much knowledge, and they'll do workshops for me, they'll teach me. But I guess, I don't know if I'm old school or just was kind of a period of time where there really wasn't much available. So
True.
It was just kind of teaching myself along the way, I guess, and very organic though. I think that slow organic process makes a really solid foundation, and a lot of experiences. I had to have life experiences along the way, kind of give you a moral, ethical, good solid foundation that I'm not in this for the money, that I can see that I'm helping people, and obviously it's nice if they help out me a little bit too.
Right. Thomas, I'm staring at that board behind you, your sign for ghost spirits and angels. Let's talk about how many books do you have now published out there?
So I've always been a storyteller, and I am a professional storyteller,
Yeah.
and I've always wanted to write books. Um, I've always been fascinated by people's accounts, encounters with ghost spirits and angels. So at one point, I just started collecting, asking questions. Um, so I've written by now 11 books, and I'm working on more. And a lot of them are collections of people's encounters with ghost spirits and angels. They have different themes. Now, some person that writes a ghost story book, a lot of times will have just ghost stories, but I've
Right.
got three categories at least.
Yes.
So we know that angels are those messengers and servants. They're not people. They may look like people, but they come from,
Yeah.
God and from, another place in the universe. Whereas a ghost is, someone who lived and died. We're having our mortal lives now. But I consider spirits to be not like ghosts or angels. They may look human, but they were never human. So ghosts were human, like we are. Spirits and angels are not human. And I think it's important to have at least those three categories. And as I've written more books, I actually come up with even more categories, of course, like aliens, whatever you call
Yeah. Right.
space beings, multidimensional entities. So you can get even more detail about that. But Ghost Spirits and Angels is my first general collection. And once again, it's not just ghost stories, though there are plenty of good ghost stories in there. These are all stories from folks that I've met. So I'm a professional storyteller. I've got all these ghost story books. I'm hired. I go to a library. It's October. I tell ghost stories for an hour. There's 50 people there. As soon as we finish, 10 people rush up and like, okay, you told us your stories. Now we want to tell you ours. It gets those juices going. Like ladies at a
Yes.
quilting bee. Once the topic gets thrown out there that everyone's got a story about their aunt or their uncle or, the brother and what happened in that category. So I literally have a file folder 2 inches thick, not with stories, just names and emails, because
Wow.
I could never keep up. So,
Right.
kept the books going. They have different themes. I've got a book of Civil War ghost stories, and so
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, this is haunted battlefields of the South, including stories from Chattanooga area and Tennessee and Georgia, Kentucky.
Yeah.
A lot of people have experiences because they lived at the land where these soldiers from the North and South fought,
Yeah.
and these spirits are still active. Someone said, well, how come they're not sleeping in Christ, or how come they're not just waiting for the second coming, or how come they haven't gone on to the light? And I say, they have a message for us that we still have great potential for division in our society, and they know exactly the price that's paid.
Oh,
You know,
I'm getting chills.
yeah, for brother fighting brother, father fighting son, and some
Yeah.
of the stories literally have that theme as people have
Oh,
experienced it. So there's a lot of stories that are related to the Civil War.
did you also go up and down like the Appalachias collecting old stories from that area as well?
So I've got some particularly from Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky.
Okay.
So that part of Appalachia, and then I've picked up a few along the way. But to be honest, I just haven't had the time or resources to really like.
What's because I know you have a book that is actually a collection of, I guess, magical properties for different woods.
Right. So
That is a fascinating concept to me. How did you put, well, A, what is it exactly? And how did you put that collection together?
so I'll hold
Yeah.
it up here and hopefully you can read with the.
The tree spirits and wood wisdom. Yes.
Right. So I've been working with woodcraft since the 1980s, and I was a featured speaker up in Alaska at a metaphysical event, and I was set up, and I brought some of my holiday ornaments, and Christmas ornaments, and I had made some like this little wooden like taper down. I was thinking this looks like a wooden icicle, and I carved a spiral on it. And these two ladies came up. I was set up, and we hadn't started yet, and one of them picked up this thing, and she
Yeah.
pointed at her friend, and her friend gave this knowing nod. And then the first lady turned to me and said, I've never met a wand maker. And I said, oh, no, ma'am, that's like a wooden icicle. That's a Christmas ornament. She shakes her head and says, no, I can feel the energy. She said, you're making wands.
Oh, I'm getting chills again. Wow.
So back to your question about awakening, right? Awakening can happen any moment, you know, Paul along the road to Damascus.
Yeah,
It can be
anytime.
dramatic, it can be subtle. The question is, you know, how open are we? Are we an open heart, an open mind? And so a lot of times it's my customers that tell me what's what. You know, they tell me, you know, here's what I did with your wand. I know you've written this book and it's got the properties, metaphysical properties of the wood, but I'm getting spirit guidance to use this Osage orange hedge apple wand to heal animals. I'm like, fine. You know, I'm learning from other people. When I do a reading, it's a full of complete exchange. I'm learning from other people. There's things that I miss, or there's things that they start crying and I realize, well, I guess this is a healing moment. I mean, I'm learning from other people. So I started making wands. I thought, well, can I make a wand? How would I make a wand? And would people buy them? And it was, you know, 2 snaps up for all of those. So I started making wands. I thought, wait a minute, one's willow, one's oak, one's pine. There's got to be a difference in energy. So I got online, as you would, and you know, go to great Google and you seek wisdom. And so I started finding the meanings of the trees, but I thought, wait a minute, these websites, they don't say where they got the information, number one. And number two, they say, you can't copy this. You can't use this. We don't give anyone permission, you know. So I thought, well, hey, I've got a whole compadre of psychic readers.
Yes.
And I got all these woods. So I took the wood samples. I took a Sharpie marker. I wrote a number. I didn't identify them. I sent them to 3 psychics in 3 states. And I give them credit in the book. Some very talented ladies. They're channelers. And I said, would you please tell me? Just hold each one and write down, you know, number 14. What do you get? Number 40. What do you get? So I went through hundreds of samples, hundreds of woods. And people really responded to it. And then I added stories of people's encounters with tree spirits. People have very heartfelt connections to special trees in their lives. And I tell people, you know, I love crystals. I've got a ton of crystals and stones, and I was into stones ever since I was a kid in the 1960s. But what do you most likely have in your front yard? A crystal mine or a tree?
Right.
Well, trees are a constant companion. So people had lovely stories. In the book, I talk about grief for the loss of a tree. My friend Sybil, her daddy, they grew up on a farm in Oklahoma, and her daddy was a water witch, which means he would dowse for where the farmers would need to dig their water wells, which is an expensive thing. And she said if they listened to him, they only dug once. So I've got great stories in here. I have an index taken from the readings where you can look up, let's say someone's dealing with bipolar or anxiety, or they want to know about psychic protection. You can just go down alphabetically and look at which trees.
Oh, excellent.
And so it's just a resource book. I'm working on a second one because in this book, there's only 125 woods. So
only 125. That's me in biology class going, it's a tree, just love it. I have no idea what the name of it is. Like, that's amazing. I that book to me, because for me personally, I have some crystals. They're not so much my thing. For my husband, if the whole house was crystal, he would love it. But I'm more, yes, the earth. I will sit with a tree. I will hug a tree. I have to go touch trees to ground myself. I talk to my trees constantly. They all have names. So that kind of material is right up my alley. And tree spirits, I do believe more people too, in a awakening that we're in. I think more people are going to be open to that, identifying that this tree here does have a spirit, and it's going to comfort you. It's going to give you strength. It's going to give you grounding. It's going to give you whatever you need. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you just go take a look at the tribal people, you know, I grew up in suburban St. Louis. I didn't grow up in the Amazon, but those tribal people, they know all what the practical uses are for the trees. They are familiar with the tree spirits. The shamans will sing to the trees. They'll sing to the herbs and plants. So, and we desperately need this earth-based spiritual connection right now,
Yes.
so that we, respect Mother Earth and we learn. And like the Native Americans, they have wonderful tradition. They will use certain trees for certain purpose. Once again, not only practical, but energetic. So
Yes.
the Zuni will only use lightning struck ponderosa pine for their prayer sticks. And the Hopi will only use cottonwood, and only part of the cottonwood, a certain part, for their kachina dowels, their little spirit dowels. You can
Wow.
go down the list, and depending what area of the country you are, the native peoples know not only the practical, the physical, but also the metaphysical aspect, and they talk to the tree spirits.
Yeah.
We make fun of tree huggers, but those are the people that have a gift and a
Yeah.
connection to save Mother Earth and respect Mother Earth. And so these are stories. A lot of these things, this material, I've just been given these. I've got my psychic helpers. They took the wood samples. I have people that they will just tell me their stories
Yeah.
of connections with trees. So I'm just putting that out there, in the books for other people to appreciate and to love and to know about. But we have just great potential for healing energy. And
We do.
when you have a piece of wood, you're connected holographically with the whole energy of the whole tree and the tree species. So we know, like from CSI, that you leave a little bit of your hair, your DNA, a drop of your blood, that we can get your whole pattern, your whole readout from just a little part of you, right?
Right.
That's what traditional Chinese medicine is all about. I can read
Right.
someone's health by just looking at their earlobe. We can read the whole body health. Well, it's the same for just one little piece of wood. You
Mm.
have access to the consciousness, to the spirit of the tree, and to all the possibilities there. It's like that wand or that pendant that you have, that certain wood, that's like a portal, an energetic portal that you can tune into. And so a lot of people don't know about that. I think they really would enjoy reading and finding out more about that.
Yes. You are also a craftsman, or a woods craftsman. How do we
You
use
can
that title?
say it like Barbara Walters, I'm a woodworker.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You make these though. Do you have a comfort bird to hold up? Oh my goodness, ladies
Let's
and
see if
gentlemen,
I can get
he
this
does
close.
many different of these beautiful birds amongst pendants and different all sorts of different woodwork. Oh, see, that is so me. That is so beautiful.
These
That you can
are,
feel. Go ahead.
yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because
Oh,
I think, we desperately need comfort at this, part of our journey. It's been very stressful lately. And then there's always grief and loss. I'm a counselor and art therapist. And even I saw kids in kindergarten that had grief issues, grief
mm,
and loss issues. So it's just part of our human journey. We lost some people recently that were kind of notable. People passed away, and there's always these crazy things happening in the world.
yeah,
So people, once again, they're responding to these comfort birds. So this is Oregon myrtle. This is woodburn with a Celtic design, but I make comfort birds in all different kinds of
yeah,
woods. This is yew, Y-E-W, which is sacred in the Celtic, British Isles tradition. It's very protective wood, and it's just a mountain of stories you can tell. But people hold these and they talk about their children, or they gave one for their children, or maybe they lost someone that passed away, and they go to bed with the comfort birds and they just hold
yeah.
them and feel better. So yeah, the comfort birds are really amazing.
Years ago when they started coming out with like stress balls. See, for me, I would rather have one of those comfort birds and just smooth my thumb as the wood is comforting me. I'm participating in the comfort because they're also nice and smooth, guys. They're beautiful pieces that getting that energy from the wood, because trees wood is extremely comfortable to me. That's how I've always related. I will, if I really need to cry or release, I go sit under a tree. It's always been that way since I was a kid. So these birds that you're carving, it's like I can just imagine, even in a hectic life, if let's say I don't have time to grieve, which is so weird that we think that way now. I can hold that for a while. 5 minutes and just soothe myself, getting that energy. I think it's an amazing gift that you're offering people. It's just, they're beautiful. The energy's good, and the concept is worthwhile.
Right. All different kinds of woods. One wood I work with is thousands of years old. So this is oak that has been down in a bog for thousands of years, and it's turned black. So 5,000-year-old bog oak is amazing energy. And so if folks just kind of come by my table and, pick up a piece of, a wand or a spoon or a comfort bird or a holding heart, just to feel that energy, people have very visceral, strong reactions. Like I've got to have,
Oh, I got this from you, Thomas. I wasn't even thinking, and it sits right next to me. I got this from you at one of the last fairs.
Thanks. Yeah. So I also, besides wood, I work with bonestone, shell, and antler. And that is pipestone, which is a beautiful, beautiful energy.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, my audience knows Courtney's all fire. And the moment I touched this, it was kind of like, it felt like fire, but it felt like calming fire to me. Like, this is to balance me. This is to steady my fire, and it feels so good. See, ladies and gentlemen, I'm at the event, the Natural New Earth Market. It is for more earth focused people and more those who are doing the good work and as so talented as Thomas. I personally am reaching out to those that I know create such beautiful work, ladies and gentlemen. It's I want to talk a little bit though, because also at the event, you're going to be telling some stories as the wonderful storyteller that you are. When I can pull you away from reading people's palms, Thomas, I have to say that is for me, because I went to school for fiction writing and storytelling. To me, it's such the greatest experience. It's such a great for the person giving the story and the audience. It's like having a little play and not having to do the whole hoopla of a play, and the richness of oral storytelling, the history there. Can you tell me a bit of how you got more into that?
So in the 1990s, I worked around the state of Kentucky as an artist in residence.
Okay.
And I was a visual artist, but I was also an emerging writer. And so I would take a look at these other artists. We would get together for an annual retreat, and there were writers, authors, there were storytellers. And I would look at those storytellers and say, gosh, I kind of would like to do that. So as I was going to these far-flung little schools all around Kentucky, a lot of these schools didn't have an art teacher, and I was there as a teaching artist, a professional artist. We would finish. I would say, okay, we get an hour for each group of kids. And I would say about 45 minutes, hey kids, if you finish cleaning up, do a good job cleaning up in the next 5 minutes, in the last 10 minutes, I'll tell you some stories. So I just kind of practiced. I had that audience that I kind of liked, and I just started picking stories that I liked. And then after a while, around getting near the year 2000, I just started creating a story program, World Folk Tales, and I still tell that program. And then over the years, I got gigs at libraries and schools as a storyteller. I got my books written and published.
Wow.
All the ghost story books, of course, kids love ghost stories.
Yeah.
But they love any kind of, children, they're hardwired to pay attention to narrative, that musical, that movie, that video, grandpa, grandma, tell me a story. This is the way, that we all learn. And you take a look at the radio programs that are out now and the internet-based stuff like The Moth, Radio Hour. People are telling their stories. There's no more powerful way to affect human beings than through telling their story. It was that woman that survived cancer. It's that man that was, nabbed in another country and thrown in prison. What happened to him? It's that young person that fought for the U.S. military. What were their experiences?
Yeah.
Anything, you name it. Just how was your day at school? You want to tell a story. So I just love telling stories. I play guitar and harmonica and other instruments. And so I just love storytelling. And of course, when I'm at metaphysical events, I'll focus definitely on metaphysical stories, whether it's my story personally, or once again, like my books, bringing forth stories that other people have shared with me.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, when Thomas, because I've not only have I seen pictures, but I've seen, especially when you do with the ones with kids, which won't necessarily be at the event in September, but I can see their little faces. I can see them enthralled. And I love that you understand that when we share our stories, that's really how we learn in so many ways. When we share and express things, it's for me and our folk tales are all of the old stuff that might seem obsolete. No, if it's done by storytelling, it's an experience. And I applaud you for that. And I didn't get a chance to tell you your children's book. Yeah, do you have that nearby? I got that for our nephew, Brad's nephew. Well, my nephew too. He's the youngest of the bunch. And I got that and you signed it for him. He loved it. And when he saw that you signed it for him, his first response was, "He wrote this for me?"
And you told him yes.
Yes, and we said yes, he did. But before I shipped it to him, I read it. What a good book for children. A lovely book, the Halloween Sleepwalker. Go into that for a minute as to what the inspiration for that. And it is a great book, guys. You talk about it for a moment.
So just like Jesus in the parables, a lot of stories have multiple layers, different levels of meaning. And, let he who has ears to hear, listen and understand. And so a lot of the stories I pick to tell children and books like Halloween Sleepwalker, they're didactic, they're teaching tools. And so Halloween Sleepwalker, which is illustrated by a wonderful artist that lives in Lexington. It's about a boy who wanders out at midnight on Halloween Eve and has some encounters with some witches across from their country home in the cornfield. And he takes a bite out of an enchanted apple. He gets a second sight, sees some crazy things, runs back home. And then at the end of the book, just the way it's presented, it's like, well, was he sleepwalking? Was he dreaming? Did this really happen? And even if it really happened, what does it mean? And of course, if families want just an entertaining book and story, they got it. And I love to tell stories. I can include Halloween Sleepwalker in my ghost story programs with kids and families. But there's some involved spiritual lessons in there for the need to know folks. So at one point, he's put on a broom. They just send him off flying, and he's going around. He goes over the graveyard, and the ghosts are reaching up, trying to grab him. But when he flies over the church, the broom loses power. And one way to phrase that, it's the idea of competitive magic, which of course you had with Moses, and Aaron, and they're throwing the staffs down, and the Pharaoh's magicians were throwing their staffs down, and they're turning into snake, and what's going to happen? Or even we talked about earlier, the journey of Christianity and kind of metaphysical New Age things. It's like, do these have to be opposing forces? Are they complementary? But you can call it competitive magic. So I
don't know if I've ever heard that term before. I don't think I have, Thomas, and I love that term. Yeah, because that's definitely a thing, competitive magic. That I get it. Yeah.
Right. Wow. I mean, just think about, back to Catholic Church, you have the exorcism. So, you've got the competing, forces that are creating the mischief, whether you call them evil or demonic or just, however you label it. And then you have the priest coming in, and he has his armamentarium of, techniques and backing of the church to deal with that. And a lot of children deal with psychic boundary issues, and families And parents, they have no idea. You know, little Johnny comes in and says, I saw a woman in a wedding dress crying. You know, what's the parent supposed to do with that? They're at a total loss. Do you talk to the minister? Do you see the priest? Do you call Ghostbusters?
Yeah,
And
right.
then, you know, kind of worse yet is, oh my gosh, we got a little psychic child here, a sensitive child. And so some families, I think it's really helpful to have this, because this can be an inroad to talk about children that are sensitive. A certain percentage of the population, children and adults, we are sensitive. I'm sensitive.
Yeah.
And so these sensitive kids, they're going to have a rough ride in our regular society. They need as much support as they can get. And so this book is an opportunity to talk about, and a lot of kids do see things. A lot of the stories
Yeah.
in my books, they're from adults, but they're things that happened when they were a
When
kid.
they were kids. And how that book ends, which we're not going to give you the ending. How that book ends, though, I saw what you did, that it gave a window, a door to that. If your child, if you're sensing or questioning, like he might be gifted or she might, whomever might be gifted there or sensitive, it opens that door of communication. I saw what you did there with the way you wrote it. And that's really why I bought it for our nephew, that clearly is, and it's kind of hard in that family because dad completely like atheist, none of this stuff is real. And then mom is like, no, I think so, but I don't know anything about anything. Like, and then they have this
Right.
child who is extremely sensitive.
Mhm.
That I sent them that book and said, hey, this is from, I'm Aunt Coco. So it was like, this is from Aunt Coco. So he can talk with me or you can start talking to him. And yeah.
Right. So I think we have developmental levels for a lot of things. You can study that in Psych 101 in high school or college,
Yeah.
you know, for social, for physical, all these different, but we also have developmental levels for spiritual. And a lot of people, you know, like they had something scary happen, like they were 13 years old. Maybe this girl, 13, thought about this guy, this old guy lives a block away, that he's going to die, and then he dies, and they internalize that, like I caused that, or I'm responsible. And so then you get stuck at a certain developmental level. The next thing you know, you're 40 and you're a mom or you're a dad. And
Right.
then, but where are you developmentally? You may be a 10-year-old in like spiritual psychic development. So
Yes.
here we are, we have adults trying to respond to gifted or sensitive children. And where are they at
And where are
emotionally?
they at? Yeah.
Unless they have an open mind, an open heart, and they're willing to like not only deal with where their kids at or potentially at, but also that they can grow and start moving up developmental levels too, then there's going to be denial, there's going to be
Yeah.
problems. So my stories, all my stories in my book kind of nudge at that to try to dissolve that fear and just say, let's just tell the stories. I've got stories of invisible friends. There's children that talk to dead people. There's just
Yeah.
no other way around it. And I think just like we have that big bugaboo about, good touch, bad touch, sexual abuse, we're not going to get anywhere unless we talk about it. We need to get this, it's like airing a wound. You need to get it out in society. We can't sweep it under the rug anymore. And it
Right.
doesn't mean you need to give children inappropriate, talks about, sexual stuff, but you just need to have children need to be able to talk about things that happen to them that are inappropriate. Same thing, I think, for all this metaphysical stuff. Let's just get the stories out there. Let's be an open system. And, but a lot of people are like, well, don't talk about our ghosts because we're going to have to sell our house someday, so we don't want anybody at school to know that we got crazy ghosts going all around our house. Or I can't handle this, I don't want to deal with it. Well, what is the kid going to go to if they can't go to
Yeah.
their parents? So they
Right.
end up talking to other kids is one thing. And so even the minister's son is sneaking out there to the tobacco burley barn playing with the Ouija board because kids
Yeah.
are
Right.
curious. Kids are going to find out about these things. They know my parents say there's nothing there. Guess what? I know there's something
I
there.
know there's something there.
And
Yes.
so you're doing a disservice to your children if you don't just, get it out, talk about it, or get someone in there, who can help midwife that process. But this is an issue that I'm just coming at through literature. I'm coming at through
Well,
storytelling.
which is actually, I appreciate the way you're coming at it, because then it's on their terms in a way. Like you're giving them the information, you're giving them these, if they want to open the door of communication, they can, but it's still in their control in a way. Cause I think that's an element there that people need of, okay, I'm going to explore this. I'm going to talk to my kid about this, but it still has to be on kind of my terms and my, you know, my time. Cause they're probably processing, like you said, and your books allow that space. It allows, okay, we're going to read a story and talk about it. It's not a full lecture, go to this class or go to counseling because something's wrong with you, or, you know.
I was telling you, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. It gives them
was,
that balance. Yeah.
I was telling ghost stories too. I get hired to go tell stories at birthday parties. And it was, you know, fall. And so they wanted me to tell ghost stories. This was 10-year-old boys, like there was like a dozen of them. They were all about the same, you know, 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I said, kids, I'm going to tell you some ghost stories, but I want to ask you first, have you ever seen a ghost? And every single hand went up.
Yeah.
If the parents don't want to deal with it, that's going to be communicated through body language and verbal and nonverbal ways. So children have stories. I go into places like psychiatric lockdown.
Yeah.
You know, and here's kids that have a DSM diagnosis, you know, whatever it is, they're bipolar, ADHD, they're like got a whole laundry list of, you know, what's supposed to be wrong with them. But those kids are the ones that are most in tune with the spirit.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And I have to say, it's so with your books, with your storytelling, with this aspect, I don't know if people really understand that whenever a child says, I've seen a ghost, or what was that, mom or dad, or whatever, grandma, if we don't at least allow them to express themselves and maybe respond with, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. That at least gives them opportunity to still accept themselves. It's when I think it's when we shut the door completely, they're learning. And like you said, through body language, they're learning. If we go, oh God, you know, don't talk about that kid.
Every other topic, you know, we don't expect the parents to be expert and know all the dinosaur names.
Yes.
But, you know, kids, if they want to learn about dinosaurs, the parent's going to say, okay, let's go to a museum, let's get you a book.
Right.
So why would we expect parents to be an expert about psychic development or metaphysical things? But the problem is, this is a very internalized thing. This is not just, you know, how many different dinosaurs can I name, but this is psychic boundaries. So these are kids that can't sleep because there's creature, multidimensional entities coming through the walls at night.
That was me. That was me as a kid.
You know, if a kid said there's something under the bed, guess what? There's something under the bed.
There's something under the bed. Yeah, I agree, Thomas. I so agree. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was such a pleasure talking to Thomas here. Natural New Earth Market, September 9th through the 11th. I know Thomas will be all set up because he's traveling from Kentucky. Definitely, he will be there the 10th and the 11th. All of his too, for all of you that are in Kentucky or maybe Indiana, around that area, in the description, I have all of his next events, his storytellings, the expos he's going to. They will all be in the description. There's so much gratitude, appreciation for just you as a person, Thomas.
Thank you.
And I'm happy that people can meet you here. I want them to meet you physically, but I'm going to put your Facebook below as well, because he will sell and ship to you the comfort birds and all sort of good stuff. So guys, get in touch with Thomas. Thank you, Thomas.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
And everyone, keep shining, you beautiful stars. I will see you again. Thank you.